Morning. Allie, are you ready? Great. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining the Insurance Fund Working Group. This is Thursday, January 23rd, 2025, and we are convening the meeting. First on the agenda are remarks by the chair. And I do just want to say, I want to thank the committee membership for spending so much time working on this. We had a lot of information thrown our way. We held several meetings over the summer and fall. And everyone's done wonderful work. I think everyone really participated equally. And, diving into this really is something that we haven't done in a while. So I can't express how much I appreciate everyone's comments and effort and feedback on this. Anyone else have any opening remarks? Great, let's move on to the review of the draft report. A draft report was sent out to all the committee members, and we can just briefly kind of go through that report. And there's plenty of room for improvement and suggestions and changes. So first, we put the mission statement in from the Special Act 24-15. The membership was included on page 2. A table of contents is on page 4. And then we went into the background on how we got here. I think just when I was reading through this, one of the things that I noted that I think is missing from here would be to reference an index, because all of us kind of know, what we're looking at here in terms of a summary, but I think we need the hard data at the end of this report. Does anyone have any comments on that? Jane?
I absolutely agree. I think that the more information we can include, the stronger the report will be. So the information that was provided through the course of the meetings, I think, would be helpful to include, a good amount of that.
Eric?
I would concur. I would like the report to be a complete document so that people don't have to go to other meeting materials and such to have a complete picture. I think you make a good point. Index would be excellent.
Perfect. So we will add that to the end. We'll start with the budget, and then we can include all the materials that were submitted from each agency. We'll also include the OLR report. I know that's on page 5. We kind of reference that, but then it says the report included here. Well, we should make sure that, report is included. Any other comments on the background section?
Repwood.
Jane?
I think it would be helpful to maybe clearly define the 3 different assessments and what they are. I think it gets a little confusing in terms of, what is the general assessment, what's the vaccine assessment, and what's the public health assessment. And to the extent that we can help with that, we'd be happy to do that. And I think that kind of would flow all the way through the report.
Okay, so let's go to page 6 at the top. There is the breakdown of the 3 assessments. We are going to add an explanation of what each of those assessments mean and how they're derived.
Okay.
Okay, so let's work together on that. Sue?
Just thinking, based on Jane's comments, maybe actually a definitions or glossary of terms kind of page might make sense, where we could include each assessment in there, and then some of the other terms of reference that are used throughout the document, just to make it clear. I think it's excellent. I'm really, really thankful that this working group was established. I think it's really important for the institutional knowledge to get passed on in this form, so that future policymakers and those of us on the outside of the ropes, can learn and benefit from all of the work that this committee did. So thank you, and thank you to your staff, who have always been very responsive and accommodating.
Okay, you both are not going to get off that easily. We're going to have Sue, can you try to do it, the glossary of terms, and Jane, can you add the explanation of the the three assessments?
You sure?
Okay, thanks. Tammy?
This is way up there today. Yeah, I wanted to kind of chime in on that. I think especially for the purposes of what this committee was put together, it's important to note like the general assessment. It's funny because in industry, we call it the assessment of apportionment because that's what it says on the bill. It's all of the Department of Insurance. I think it's imperative that we break down, the general assessment, the assessment of apportionment covers all of the different areas the Department of Insurance handles, whereas the health and welfare fee or the quote unquote immunization assessment, and the public health fees are definitely based on healthcare membership. So if we have in there what these assessments are for, I think that would be useful because otherwise they just all kind of lump together.
I totally agree. So I think that we'll develop that in our description of the three assessments.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
Senator Osborne?
Thank you. And I appreciate the information that's been gathered here. This is something that the Appropriations Committee has been looking at, the assessments, when we did the assessments, how they first came about. The Insurance Committee has always looked at this, but Appropriations was looking at it from the dollars that were being asked to be added to the insurance fund. And I think having this gives us a background to say, should we or should we not add another assessment and what would be the impact? And this shows the impact. And I think that that's important for us to know what that impact is before we make a decision. So I appreciate having this information. I think it validates what Representative Walker and other members and I and other members of the Appropriations Committee were saying when you come to us and say, we want to add more more assessments on here, we were saying, wait a minute, what are we doing? What is the impact on here? How does it impact policies of individual people? So that's something that I think is important for us to recognize. That all being said, I want to make sure that we are doing something now. So I don't want this to take forever to get this report done because we're already going to be in February. And for us, we will be making decisions fast. And so I would like to get this done no later than the middle of next week. So I think I'd like to get it done this week, but it is Thursday. So I think that that's something that we have to pay attention to. So if all of you wouldn't mind, let's have a target date of getting this done no later than next Wednesday with an approved document that we are sending out on Wednesday. So I'd like to have everybody focus on that piece of it. I don't care if you want to add in every single word that was said, because I think there was a lot of really good things said during the committee. And I often blame a colleague of mine who wanted me to get involved in insurance for a long time. And I pushed it away and said, no, I don't want to do that. But you have all dragged me kicking and screaming into learning more about the insurance fund and insurance policies individually. I want to make sure everybody else has the opportunity to read this and learn from it. So if you wouldn't mind, let's get it done. We should probably target Tuesday for a final review by the committee with a sign off via Zoom so that we don't have to make sure that we have another meeting. We can have another meeting. I'm okay with that. But if we can't get a room or we can't get something, we need to get this signed off on and done so that the administration can know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I think that's wonderful. I was going to say Friday next week, but I'm going with
Oh,
her.
I-
I'm going with her deadline. So if Sue and Jane can have that information to us on Monday, we can add that into the report. We can get a draft around to the group end of day Monday, and then we can incorporate any changes over the next few days and have this prepared for Wednesday. Okay. So we've picked a target date. Any other comments Any other changes we need, Eric?
No changes. I just wanted to lend my thanks to the group, to you, as the leader of this group. Many of us have been talking about this issue for years. I think it's not an overreach to say that this is the first time it's risen to such a level of conversation. And I think it's very timely. So I wanted to thank you and everybody on this working group because this is extremely important and it gives us a platform to work off of. And just want to say thanks.
Chris?
Thank you. I had a question about on the findings and recommendations. Under number 5, we have an italic, I implement a legislative process for the approval of any future assessments to the insurance fund. Do we want to enumerate that as a separate recommendation? It doesn't really fall under, I think, what bullet number 5 has. And if we want to use it as another one, not that I want to add a 9th recommendation necessarily, but have it be a separate recommendation rather than something that's kind of thrown in with public transparency.
So leave the public transparency on its own and then do another bullet on establishing a legislative process?
Yes, because I think that the public transparency bullet talks about having OPM come in and report, have the a meeting of the 2 committees, and then have an actual recommendation for then what that process looks like after that.
I think that's a great recommendation. Any comments on that? Okay, thank you, Chris. We'll do that. Sue?
Thank you. As I'm looking through the findings and recommendations, I think I can speak for Eric on this, but I'm thinking of adding a recommendation or adding a recommendation above number 1 that really starts with maintaining the current assessment and funding structure for the Department of Insurance. I think it's implied in this list of recommendations, but it probably makes sense to call it out. And to, because I don't think that's been, you know, I think the industry is supportive. I think we have one of the best insurance departments in the country, from what we hear as the industry makes its way across the country. So I think it makes sense to call that out.
Any comments on that?
And let me concur. She does speak for me on that issue. I completely concur with that first bullet.
I think that would be a fabulous addition, so I concur as well. I just want to know too, I do have a couple of other tweaks, I would say, through the document. And if you don't mind, I mean, we can just share those when we share the other items that we talked about, including the number of insured lives in Connecticut. I think there was a little bit of confusion on that one, and so I want to make sure that we've got that nailed down.
And that's referencing from our last meeting, we went back and forth on the insured lives and breaking down those numbers. I do think that chart and explanation is very important, so we will definitely include it in here going forward. What? Any other comments or suggestions? Chris?
Just in the second bullet point about the transfer of the financial responsibility from the insurance fund back to the general fund, is any more detail needed on what that looks like, or do we want to leave it kind of open? Just that, you know, we list the different items that are paid for through that, but we don't really describe how that transfer, that shift. Would we do 1/5 of the cost of each one of them? Would we transfer some of them in the first year, some of them in the second year? Do we want to make that recommendation, or do we want to leave it open to the Appropriations Committee to make that decision? Just throwing it out there for discussion.
Thank you. So these are recommendations, and where we stand on the budget won't be really decided until later on, because there are going to be a lot of changes to the budget, and we'll look at the governor's budget. But I would say I had actually asked for a rollout, but a rollout of dollars, and we can say over a 5-year period, it's X number of dollars, and it's planned to be why, just to have, so people have an idea on the numbers. And that way we can have that down, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I just want to be really clear that it may not happen as we intend, as this working group envisions it happening, because there's going to be a lot of people and a lot of changes over the next little bit of time on it. So we can put a sentence in on that. Be cognizant of the fact that there are going to be a lot of changes to the budget, so that we may or may not be successful, but I think having it in there gives us a point to reference.
Thank you. Representative Nuccio.
Thank you. Perhaps it would be helpful to also put the number, because I think the public health fee, the total amount of that, I think it's under 10 million, right? If I remember incorrectly, it might be around like the 8 or 9 million mark-ish for the public health fee. So if we have that in there, I think that's also helpful. You know, I agree with Kathy. We have to look at the entire budget as a whole in that, but $8 million is a small number in a $52 billion budget. So it's going to come down to, personally, I think if we want the best impact, you would want to see that $8 million in there, right? You don't want to take it out over 5 years, because it's going to be dribs and drabs, and as claim experience and everything else goes up, it's going to get lost. So maybe if we put the dollar amount, because it looks like the only one we're looking at moving out is the public health fee, which started out at like $4 million when it came in. Pardon me?
There's others.
Well, I thought the only one that we're looking at moving into the budget, though, according to this, I thought was the public health program, the public health fee. They also, there's the,
The public health fee is the public health programs that
Yeah.
were added in around 2014 and then rolled up a little.
right. It started, it started back then. And here we're saying we're gonna keep the number 2 here. See the public health programs, that one? Yeah, that's about, I think it's maybe around 8.5 to 9-ish million dollars in total for
Yep,
the state.
yep.
The assessment, the immunization, we're saying we're gonna leave that where it is. The Department of, the assessment of appropriations just didn't really get into, well, some of it did remove some of it, but that's removing or moving, right?
Mhm.
So some of those would move back too. So if we put dollar amounts on these, I think that would be helpful from a budgetary perspective. You know, the public health fee is this much, the OHS is this much, you know, Office of Behavioral Health is this much. So that way it gives us a more poignant number to look at, especially in consideration to the budget.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we need to dive further into the detail on the numbers, which we will do in the findings and recommendations. And we will also reference those numbers. We'll put an asterisk, and then we'll have the budget of the insurance fund
Right,
in the
yeah.
index.
Yeah, so as of last budget, you know, like OHS or,
Yep.
you know, was $32.7 million. You know, as of the last budget, the public health fee was $8.7 million. So that way we've got, it's not arbitrary anymore. You know, we're not just saying we're gonna move this to the budget over 5 years. We're saying it's ends up being X amount of $1 million removed. So I don't think we need to get into super detail, just high level, what's the last budget number?
Right.
Thank
Senator
you.
Austin?
And when we print that out, we're going to print it out differently. We're going to have it so it's on one sheet. So
Yes.
it's not,
Yep.
you know, we'll just change it to print out on one sheet on the budget.
Mhm.
I can't do number 4. I would say transfer the financial responsibility of the behavioral health advocate from the insurance fund to the general fund. I think that that's the best way. That one sentence will tank this whole project.
Okay.
So it can't say that. So,
And that would have to be done legislatively anyway to close the whole office, right? Like,
right, but I don't even want to make the
Yeah.
recommendation.
Got it. Anything else? So we have a plan of action. It's gonna be fast. And I will work on the comments, the details on the budget, on some of the new bullets, and resend the report out based on that discussion. Sue will work on the glossary of terms. Jane and her team will work on explanation of the assessments, and we will get a draft out to everyone on Monday. And then we'll do final edits over the next few days. And the report will be published end of day Wednesday.
end of day Wednesday and go to we'll send it to leadership and to the governor's office.
Any other comments? And we will adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.